Okay, welcome everybody to episode 141 of Extinctionati. And the technical things are a bit glitchy today, but we will try. And we thought about talking a little bit about Le France and the revolutionary people in the streets of Paris. And I understand, Katrina, that you have been checking that out a bit.
I mean, I haven't been following it closely, but it seems as intense as the Yellow Vest protests back in 2018.
Yeah,
Um, and what's interesting about France, compared to Germany, is they are they're suffering more with the energy crisis than is Germany. So they could also be upset about that. But this strike is mainly about the retirement age being moved from 62 to 64.
yeah,
But I'm here. I'm the mainstream media is showing that it's the number of protests are in the thousands, but I'm hearing that it's actually in the millions. All
yeah,
the millions in I don't know. I know it's happening all across France, but Paris is like where it's really getting intense, and um it's getting violent, very violent, and there's a lot of fires going on. Have you seen the images, the
yeah. I
videos?
saw something from RT yesterday, but just the images and not the videos yet. But I guess RT, because they are the east and we are the west, right? So RT will not be censoring what is happening in the streets in Western Europe, you know. But our own government and media will censor it because we want everything to be peachy, clean, and nice. And the only bad thing is Putin and Russia, right? So
Of course, yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
mean, yeah, no, but it's interesting because I think that this is, and you see a lot of young people on the streets, which is interesting. You would think it's older people because it's the pension age, but a lot of young people, um, and it's also, but I really think that a lot of this has to do with the energy crisis and inflation.
yeah. I think
Not
also,
just because of just, it's a very specific demand, but I think France is hurting more. They've had to. I've heard like the energy crunch there is really bad.
yeah, I think also it's kind of related to the fact that many of these European countries have already uh, had a big downsizing of their welfare state and social programs. Um,
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
so yeah, as American, you probably don't know that, and many most Europeans don't know it either. But it's like country after country, they severely downsize the state or the government, and what they do to keep people alive, basically, health services and everything. And they, I would imagine that the governments will just use whatever crisis there is as a reason, as an opportunity to do the downsize, because it's like you don't have to be a genius to understand that they're going to do this in country after country, from Spain to Latvia, right?
Oh right, yeah.
Everything is going the way of Greece, and many people are saying that Greece was kind of the what do you call it, the canary in the coal
In the
mine,
commune,
or the test bunny, um, for what they're going to do in all of Europe. And yeah, so basically, stripping away society and leaving it with raw competition, I guess. While other countries, of course, go the opposite way and give people if not free weed, then legal weed, and also go into what do you call that? Citizen payment, like Canada. They're going into what's the term for that?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Give every citizen some allowance, whether or not they work.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't
I
remember what
know
it's
what you're
called.
talking about. I just can't remember
Yeah,
the name of that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
What's interesting though about France is I was listening. Have you heard of Jeremy Grantham? He's a billionaire.
No, no, no.
He was talking. It was a chat a couple of like about 6 months ago or something, and he was talking about um, how in the U.S. the worker participation right now is incredibly low, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're exhausted. We don't have all the benefits that Western Europeans have. And he was saying that, and I've understood this. France is France, it's part of their culture to protest.
Yeah, yeah.
And um, back in from 1970, he was giving some numbers where the French from 1970 were able to ensure that their salaries went up by 150%. Um, and then Germany was about 100% because they all strong unions protesting. UK, I think it was something like between I think it was 60 to 80%, while in the US, salaries have only risen about 10 to 20% because the top the top percentage of 1% has reaped all the benefits from improved efficiency. They've taken all of that from the American worker.
Hmm.
So yeah, just getting back to the French, it's interesting because the French lead. So what we're seeing in France is coming to other places, but they're just ahead of it because that's that's what they do. They strike.
Yeah, the latest thing I learned about France is that this Macron guy, this El Presidente, I can't really speak French, but I'm just pretending. But he doesn't really have a party. He doesn't have a regular political party behind him. It's more or less just like a puppet from the globalists or BEF or whatever. And yeah, so people really don't want this guy. It's more like they vote for him because they don't want the other guy or the other woman, as the case may be in France, Marine Le Pen or something. And I think what you said about the French having a big tradition for fighting in the street. That's very, very real. You have the French Revolution, and actually the street design in Paris, it's designed to be hard to barricade. You know, they designed these broad streets into the central plaza exactly because it would be harder to barricade for the people and easier to police and send in the military or whatever to clean up riots. So that's quite interesting. Um, I also think, as you said, it's kind of it's both a safety valve for society, but I think also it works as inspiration for people to rise up elsewhere. You just had a huge win for the farmer struggle in Netherlands, where
I heard about that.
there was
Yeah.
an election, and the party supporting the farmer protest won a lot of seats and more or less took over power. I don't know if they took over power in the central government, but it was a huge win for the farmers. Mm.
Yeah, I Macron. he gave a speech back. Did you hear about that speech that he gave? Which is
No.
interesting because you would never think of you know, head of states. The only head of state that I've heard um, give like any kind of you know, a speech about reality was that Finnish president that said if we lose the Arctic, we lose the world. However, Macron last year gave the end of abundance speech, the end of
Hmm.
assumptions. It's ultimate. I'm quoting here. It's ultimately a tipping point that we are going through that can lead our citizens to feel a lot of anxiety. Uh, Faced with this,
Yeah,
we have
but that's
yeah.
that's kind of the control lapse, as I call it. You know, the controlled collapse.
Hmm.
We've been talking about that on this show previously. Uh, Basically, the first time I raised it, we kind of collectively dismissed it as an idea, or said that it was likely not going on. But that was like over a year ago, I think. So the control lapse is kind of the political um, game where they are, for some reason or other, I don't know why, they are sort of trying to collapse society by making energy and electricity and gas extremely expensive, and also more or less voluntarily or on purpose starting the war so that you have a war going. You know, I don't know if you have read George Orwell's 1984, but in that fictional universe anyway, the governments of the world want to have wars going because then they can blame everything on the war and they can sort of amass the population behind their government against the other governments, blah blah blah. Yeah, so the control apps, I would say that, you know, if I had to speculate, I would say that they're doing it as a test run. That they're doing it to as an undeclared um, test run or exercise to see how they can still manage people when the real collapse comes, like in a year or two. What do
I
you
think
think
the
of that?
collapse is. I think the collapse is here. In Gail Tverberg, in her recent post, is saying that basically she thinks it's here, and it could be as quick as a few years. The whole collapse. Just because we have run out of cheap fossil fuels, and she says that that's probably why there's these wars breaking out everywhere, and countries are going to have to trade more regionally because there won't be enough energy for you know, for globalization.
Mm,
um, and it this is going to hurt the U.S. a lot, because I mean, sorry that I'm mentioning U.S., but she's from here, and so um, she kind of caters her articles to the U.S. You know, U.S. and
yeah,
Canada. She said that because, you know, we're not going to get all the products from Asia, because and that's going to really hurt our standard of living. It's going to go down by, you know, a lot, because we're just not going to be able to afford the transportation cost to get those
yeah.
products here. And it's interesting though what's happening with BRICS and um, you know, Russia, you've got Saudi Arabia. I mean, they've got the crude oil. They've got the really good stuff, you know.
Mm,
And we don't here in the U.S. We don't have the high quality oil. Um, we don't have that golden stuff that Saudi Arabia has. You know, the
no,
very the the kind of oil that has, you know, more. I don't even know how to explain it.
but
Um,
just about the collapse that you mentioned,
yeah.
I agree with Tverberg, and our group also agrees that the collapse is already, it's here already, in a way, but it has, different stages.
Right.
We joked about the soup stage some months ago when there was an action at an art gallery where Extinction Rebellion threw soup at the paintings. But when I tried to figure out some kind of hard milestones for the collapse a couple of years ago, I thought about international trade. Like you
Hmm.
said, when you stop getting stuff from Asia, from shipping from East Asia to America and to Europe, when international trade, shipping and stuff breaks down, that's kind of a very hard milestone on the way to complete societal collapse, right? Uh, but it might also be a sensible um, stage on a sensible world government's way to a more ecological society. Because if North America was self-sufficient, with food and energy and stuff, and Europe was, less international trade would actually be, in a completely different world, which was not insane, would actually be um, one of the things that you would do, and just to transport things less around,
Oh, of course. And that's
Mm.
already, I'm already seeing updates. There's, I don't know if you follow, there's a really good, I call it the CNN for Doomers. It's, it's
What's
called,
that?
it's called Climate and Economy Roundups. They come out frequently. And,
Mm,
so, yeah, they were talking about, there was an article about, that shipping container, there's a lot of, you know they're seeing a lot less freight being moved around. Also, another sign is universities, the enrollment numbers are down. And
mhm.
so anything, so now it's like I feel like the economy is moving towards, on it, kind of like on its own, towards more necessities rather than adding complexity, because there's been a lot of layoffs also in Silicon Valley, and a lot
Yeah,
of, so because all of that is not necessary to survive. So it's interesting how you're hearing about a lot of white collar layoffs in that field, because it's sort of like, um, when during COVID, a lot of blue collar workers lost their jobs, with the lockdowns. But now, in white collar workers got a lot of perks. They got to work from their homes and stuff like that. And so now it's like the reverse. Blue collar workers are very much more demand right now than white
yeah,
collar,
yeah.
because white collar, those jobs are, people are not spending anymore. I mean, I'm talking about the American consumer is really struggling. And
Mhm.
so I think that's why we're going to see a lot more layoffs in the white collar. That's what is anticipated.
Yeah, I think they're doing a controlled, limited collapse as a kind of a stress test, to gain experience. Because I think at some level, I think the deep state, in the West at least, they know the direction we're going, right? Because you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see where this is going. So I think they're carrying out, no matter what stupid presidents or prime ministers are around in the governments, in the different countries. I think the deep state and the people, the VEF or whatever, which are kind of coordinating things, the Bilderbergs, they have decided to do this test run, and see where it breaks down and where it hurts. uh, and you can put the intentional state sabotage of electricity stations in America, the intentional blowing up of the pipeline in the Baltic Sea, and the intentional triggering of the war, and also the intentional lab creation um, of a certain disease a couple of years ago. All of these things may fit into that big picture where you're trying to test shock the system in order to learn how we can manage a smaller entity, maybe how basically how governments can still remain in control of the people. Uh, Taking away people's liberties is not a new thing. It's not a new invention. Uh, so one of the interesting things about this control collapse, the way I see it, is that it kind of disproves and falsifies the idea that Lord Yu's first Reddit group and initiative with this doomer crowd was about having an activist initiated debt strike. We would just stop paying our rent or paying our bills or something, and then we would somehow magically collapse the world economy. I think that is per now falsified because we've seen this 2 or 3 year pandemic. We've seen the war where all the sanctions are not hurting Russia; they're hurting us back like a boomerang. They're hurting America and Europe. Uh, uh, all of these things that are mega shocks to the economy. So I think it proves that the economy is was at least more resilient uh, than some activists imagined. You can't just not pay rent and then make everything come crashing down. It's resilient in a lot of ways. I think even the emerging bank collapse in America, that will just be a kind of a passing phase. I don't think it will bring everything else down with it. Or how do you view that from America?
Oh, okay, so I'm I used to think the way you did about all this being planned, because I'm thinking I try to, I have a very I'm one of those people that I like to plan, I like to anticipate. But after reading the book Denial, about how the humans, we're wired to delude ourselves, after reading that and also just watching what's been happening in the last couple of years, I just get the sense that we're just we were just delusional. And I think with what's happened with Russia, the war between with what's going on with Russia, is our greatest fear was that Russia and Germany would unite.
Hmm.
And so we're kind of like an empire that's crashing. Um, and kind of reminds me of Hitler and his bunker, how they continued fighting even after, toward till the end,
Mm.
thinking that, you know, that there might be a chance that they could win. That's how I see the people in charge right now. They're completely delusional. Um, and I really think we are we are being run with people who are not rational. And I feel like China, and even though, I disagree a lot with, you know uh it's not that I'm pro Russia or pro China. I just think they're the rational people here, and um I'm scared for what the people who are leading us here in the U.S. and also in Europe, how they're just complying with what the U.S. is telling them to do. But I used to think like you, like all this is planned, but I really think we're being led off a cliff.
Yeah, let me modify a bit,
Yeah.
maybe. Um, you know, at least the only thing I'm saying is planned is kind of this controlled collapse situation, right now. So I want to go back to a gentleman called Sam Mitchell, which I'm sure
Oh
you are
yeah.
familiar with.
Yeah.
He's the ham-bone character of YouTube for over a decade. I think he's been going since 2013 or even before. I started watching him a decade ago, anyway. So why did I mention him? Can I remember that? Yeah, he's been saying for the past 2 years. He's been saying that uh, he, when he starts his shows, he says, "I'm not going to talk about the diversion from the diversion from the diversion from the collapse." Yeah, so he's been talking about um, wars and the pandemic and stuff as diversions, and then he means that they want us to worry about and talk about these things instead of the real thing, right? And the real thing, at least the way I see it, and of course I'm in this doomer sphere, even though I call myself a post doomer or beyond doomer, because I see something positive on the other side. I think there is light at the
How
end of
about
the tunnel.
I call myself an optimistic doomer. How about that?
Yeah, that's kind of the same thing. The words are not the most important thing. It's
Right.
not it's not a brand. We're not selling people sneakers with our brand on it.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting to look at it through Sam's lens there. That I think this is what I think. I think that these deep states, or the actual grown-ups in the room in the deep state, in the governments, who are kind of behind the scenes, who actually have brains to think with, and by that I mean not the politicians. Um, they know the way this is going. Uh, as I already mentioned, I think they're doing a control run collapse just to see how they're going to do things when it collapses on its own. It is already collapsing, but they're kind of speeding it up for some reason or other. I think it's to
Oh,
gain
I see what you
experience.
mean. Speeding. I see what you mean, like speeding it
Yeah,
up. I get it. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
accelerating it. But I
Yeah.
think it's kind of a test run phase by now to gain experience and see how many more people do we need here and here and here to do these things when things break down. Uh, Maybe because of riots or whatever in the future. So they're kind of wargaming it in a real life exercise. But yeah, so I'm trying to piece together my thoughts here. I think that they know which way it's going, and one of the things that they are wargaming is they don't want us to know. They don't want the larger population to know. And because they don't want us to know that due to climate/ecological stuff, all of this human society built up over 15,000 years is going to come crashing down very, very soon. They can't have everybody in society running around knowing this, because then people would just go local and break into government buildings uh,
Torstein,
and,
just to
and,
add,
and stores. Yeah,
yeah, Torstein, just to add, it's not just ecological and climate. It's also we've run out of cheap fossil fuels,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
the reason why we have 8 billion people on this planet is because of cheap fossil fuels. So it's going to be. I mean, how are we going to feed ourselves? now that we're running out of cheap fossil fuels. I mean, it's, you know, I mean, how I don't know how much. Yeah, we're in those three things: ecological, energy, and climate.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
energy is a big part of that.
yeah. We started talking about France, and I'm not sure everybody knows, but here in Europe, France is famous for having a very large percentage of its electricity done by nuclear power plants, right? So there are some non-fossil ways to generate electricity, um, which might, you know, take us like 50 years more into the future, energy-wise, anyway.
Well,
You
Christine,
know,
they're having problems with their nuclear power plants,
yeah.
and
Why is that? Why is that?
like, do you maybe should I check? Should I check to see what's going on? I don't know the details, but another issue is they have. Oh, but that brings in climate. I don't want to mix up things. Uh, yeah, because it seems like Europe is heating much quicker than other parts of the world, and it could be because they've lost aerosol. There's not a they've cleaned up their emissions,
Yeah.
and they don't have enough aerosols um, in the atmosphere. So I have a feel, but that I sorry. I'm changing the subject here. Let's go back to the nuclear plants.
No, but you're right. One of the things that, and I'm totally against nuclear energy. Don't get me wrong. But just when it comes to local pollution, when everything is running and is not breaking up or exploding or being bombed by anyone, or melting down, uh, then it's much less pollution and exhaust. So actually, in Europe, we've had all kinds of problems on the back end of cleaning things up.
Yeah.
Germany cleaned up its rivers, and then they were invaded by all kinds of plants and stuff that came by the shipping from Asia, which went up the German rivers and infested everything with this invasive species,
Oh
and
wow.
all kinds of stuff that happened as a consequence of being green and sensible and cleaning stuff up and making it less toxic and polluted. So it's a complicated thing. It's not wrong to clean things up, but things happen that are unforeseen, and it's the same thing with cleaning up the air and cleaning up the exhaust fumes and coal industry and stuff. All of a sudden, it gets warmer because the air is cleaner. Yeah, and actually, one of the biggest shocks when you come to Greenland is how extremely hot it gets in the sun up here. It may
Wow.
be it may be 5 degrees on the 5 degrees Celsius on the thermometer. But if you're sitting down on the beach in 5 degrees and the sun is shining, oh my God, it feels like 20, 32 degrees because there is no pollution in the air. It's all perfectly clean, as clean as you get on this planet. So when it's shining, it's really shining, and it's really heating your skin. And
Yeah. Oh
uh,
yeah. I think with the nuclear power plants, don't I can't please fact check me on this, but we're having it's I think it's difficult now to get we're losing because we're running out of cheap fossil fuels. We're we are losing complexity,
mm,
um and also we're running out of resources, so parts are hard to get, and I think
mm,
some of these power plants might be older and difficult to keep them maintained. I think it's something to do with that.
okay, okay, yeah, yeah. Anyway, so I feel that they are. Uh, the guys in government who are planning all of these diversions, they are trying to uh, take people's minds away from the actual crisis, from the fact that you can only go this many years into the future with the topsoil that we have for growing food and having agriculture, and we can only go so many years before all the sea ice is gone and you will have methane outbursts in the Arctic. Uh, those are kind of the real hard um, milestones that we can see in the future, and there's no going around it because these are based on tipping points that already came and went, that are in our past, and they don't want regular people to catch on to that, because that has all kinds of unforeseen or untoward consequences for the glue of society, which is optimism and trust, and yeah, things can only get better, kind of thinking. Um, so yeah, it's
Yeah.
people can basically only operate in two different modes. One is the optimistic, this economy is growing mode, and the other one is, oh my god, we fucked up. This is just getting worse and worse every year.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
mean, we're wired anyway. It's very easy to calm people down because we're, and even neuroscience has shown this. We are wired to reject things we don't like. We don't like. So
Mm,
we're wired already to delude ourselves. And so in for some reason the people in our community were not like that. Something is different about us where we are not afraid to look at reality, but most people are. They're so afraid because it reminds them of their death. I guess we're not as afraid of our mortality, but yeah, people will um, ignore what they don't want to know, and they're glad to
mm,
do that. So it's very easy to calm people down in that way, um, even though they may have some gut feeling. I'm sensing people have, they know something is wrong, but they don't want to bring it to their conscious. It's like it's in their subconscious, and they want to keep it in their subconscious. They don't want it in their conscious, like our group, like our community.
mm.
So it's interesting how different we are to most people.
Yeah, and I also think that one of the tricks that people have, or our minds have, is that if you can put a name and a person on it, then you're safe. If you can reduce all the coming catastrophe in the world down to one person named Greta from Sweden,
Mhm.
and you can somehow prove that she has three cars in her garage or whatever, what the latest rumor is on the internet. If you can prove that, oh no, she's a total fake, she's a hoax, then somehow you can fool your brain to thinking, so this one teenager or a young 20s lady in Sweden, she's not a good person. That must mean that everything is okay in the world, right? So basically, personalizing everything, making it a discussion about a number of names, celebrities, that kind of thing. Uh, and I think it is actually, it's exactly like you suggested, that because we're wired to only believe what we want to believe, then you can make, let's call it climate denier propaganda, which isn't really believable. It's not really something they believe, but it gives some kind of veneer of doubt, right? It's
Mhm.
like, yeah, but plants eat CO2 or whatever. What the arguments are. Yeah, but we've seen that if a tree grows faster when it's more CO2 in the room or more CO2 in its atmosphere. Then you don't really have to believe 100% in it, but as an ordinary person who is just seeing the climate problem in the rear, like not the rear view mirror, but in the side view, in the side vision field,
Mhm.
um, they don't really want to go into it. And I've actually met young women who are just having this extreme fear reaction just to seeing a graph. They don't even know what the graph is showing. They just have this visceral reaction to seeing a graph about some climate stuff in general. And without even reading the headline or seeing what the thing is going up or down really is, they just oh my god, they don't have any good experiences with graphs because they feel that graphs can only say negative things. They can only say that everything is going to shit. Um, so I think that those sort of psychological reactions to all the problems in our ages are interesting. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah, I started learning a lot about when I woke up to our situation in 2016. I wanted to understand why when I couldn't talk to people about what I was seeing, and I wanted to understand the human brain better, and I ran across. Have you heard of Ernest Becker? He
no,
wrote.
sorry,
Ernest Becker was a cultural anthropologist, and he wrote a Pulitzer Prize book called "Denial of Death" or something like that, "Death Denial," and he wrote it on his deathbed, um, and uh, and so so this guy named Sheldon Solomon, um, who basically uh, spent his whole career gathering empirical evidence on the theories of Ernest Becker on death denial, and it's really interesting. He basically talks about there's a really good. I'm gonna. Have you heard of Catherine Ingram? The name
yeah,
Catherine Ingram. She did an interview of Sheldon Solomon. I'll forward it to you. It's really
yeah,
really good. I just can't. My brain is not working right now, and I can't
no,
give you a
maybe
good. Yeah,
maybe I can go a little bit further because I like not in 2016, but I think in 2013, 14, around there, uh, slightly inspired by Sam Mitchell and I guess Sam Karana. I decided to go deeper into this thing, right? And into the climate. Actually, the IPCC report that came out in 13, 14 was a big warning sign to me. Not the way you would think. It was a warning sign because they're avoiding some really hard truths. They were sugarcoating it in at a level that made me think, what the fuck is this? It was so glaringly obvious to me that they were downplaying the size of the situation. Uh, so what I found out that I had to do was that number one, I can't trust anyone, any politician or media outlet, uh, because it's the editors in the media that who choose which scientists are allowed to speak. It's like today, and it's like during the pandemic. if you disagree with Fauci, you couldn't speak in the media, even though you were a what do you call it, a professor or a doctor, or you know. So basically, I found I can trust no one. I can trust nobody on this climate thing. I would just have to go to the sources, like ad fontes in Latin. If you don't know anything or you can't be sure about it, you have to go to the source directly and look at the raw numbers. That's basically what you have to do. And so I tried that, and I started looking at, it felt obvious to me that I had to go look at the sea ice in the Arctic, because when the planet is heating and the ocean is heating, and if you have ice that is floating and resting on top of the ocean every year, then obviously that is going to be the first indicator to just melt out, basically. Uh, so that was my way of kind of verifying that there was a problem, because if they're lying about everything, they could just as well just make up an entire problem, like a lot of people are saying. So then I verify that, okay, we have a problem, but the problem with that problem is that it's much, much, much greater, much vaster than anyone you have heard in the media are saying. And it's if you are in any way fluent in statistics or mathematics, it's quite easy to see that this is an effect of a tipping point that was long before we started looking into it.
Mhm.
When they sent up satellites from NASA and stuff and NOAA to monitor the sea ice, you think that was just a random idea they had? No, I don't think so. I think they sent them up because they already knew that disappearing sea ice was a problem. I think it was already in a downward slope when they got the idea to have
Mhm.
an ice monitoring satellite. So yeah, and I really think that in 1958, when the Keeling curve, the CO2 curve from Mauna Loa in Hawaii, when that curve was first published with the first kind of data in 1958, then it already showed that the CO2 situation in the atmosphere was totally out of control. It was going up every single year, which is also uh, a product of a tipping point that we have passed, right? So
Yeah.
we were already unbalanced in the way that we emitted much more CO2 than the planet could handle or store away in the ocean or in the forest, because otherwise it wouldn't go up and up and up and up.
Yeah, I remember Lord Hugh talking about how, so it's my understanding that the climate started looking exponential back in the 1980s, and the IPCC was created around 1988. And I remember Lord Hugh saying that he believed that it was created to stop environmental radicalism. Do you
Yeah,
remember him saying that?
yeah, but I've been saying it for maybe even more years than him, so
Yeah,
that is totally true. Yeah,
yeah. And it's weird, like like these studies just have been coming out about the Arctic. This recent one from Sweden, I don't know if you've heard of it, but how they're just saying that the models are wrong for the Arctic. It's melting much faster. And of course, we have been seeing this in our community, but it seems like more and more studies are coming out now they're not afraid to say it anymore. I don't know why they would have been afraid, but now things are coming out more. I don't know if you've noticed that just recently in the last months.
yeah. I think it's kind of the same thing that we talked about earlier about these diversions.
Hmm.
They want people to either fight each other because of their gender or skin color or whatever or religion, uh, or they want to distract them with all kinds of other things going on, like the pension reform, the war, the electricity price.
But that's so alarming though about the Arctic. I mean, for them to actually come out, I don't, you know what I mean? Like that would add more panic.
Yeah,
Like for
but
them.
it's but we are already so distracted. We are already so it's sort of
Oh, I
the
see what you mean.
it's not
Okay,
just burning in the kitchen. The garage is burning, and the living room is burning, and the bedrooms are burning. Everything is burning at the same time,
I
and
got it.
it's like
Uh,
it's like when
doesn't matter
they
anymore.
no, it's like when they issue a press release on Friday night. They know nobody is going to cover it because everybody is going out partying and dancing and whatever people do in the weekends in America,
Mhm.
smoke crack or whatever. I don't know. So they have, it's exactly what you said. But they basically America, whatever president they had in 1988, 86. They found that they needed this climate panel, uh, and they named it kind of deceptively the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, whatever. And it's exactly like you said, because you had, let's say, progressive, radical climate experts, climate scientists who were not afraid to speak, who said that this is a huge 10-story crisis. We have to face it now. So in order to silence those people and keep pumping oil, keep selling oil, keep making oil and gas profits, blah, 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 and keep people positive, they had to set up this basically government propaganda unit called the IPCC, because it's not an international climate panel; it's an intergovernmental climate panel. So basically there is not one scientist working in the IPCC; it's government editing scientists who work for free.
Mhm.
Nobody gets one single cent or dollar for doing science within the IPCC. It's basically a huge censorship operation where they let politicians and government heads of state uh, edit or censor contributions from scientists. Yeah, so they did it to make a more conservative and calm down kind of summary of the
Yeah,
climate
like
situation.
watered down. It's like
Watered down.
yeah,
Yeah,
they do like they don't. You've heard of Cherney, right? Jules Cherney.
I can't remember.
He was hired by Jimmy Carter, um,
Hmm.
because Jimmy Carter was very worried about the climate situation, and they were opening up uh, new areas for more like fossil fuel extraction. I don't remember the details, but Carter got very nervous, and he hired Jules Cherney to do what would happen basically what would happen to temperature if we doubled CO2.
Yeah.
Um, and so James Hansen in his book praises Cherney's he calls it a Goduncan experiment or something like that, because it kind of you know it's kind of thing it's basically a model that but that has been very useful.
Mm-hmm.
um and versus like the IPCC, they basically they do a good job of just showing like year to year, but not really looking at the whole picture and how the whole earth system works, and looking at the slow feedbacks, looking at the fast feedbacks, um and looking at the whole thing and as a using paleo climate records. You know what I mean? I'm not explaining it right, but um
No, but
Yeah.
I understand. I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying. Yeah. Mm. Well, I think uh, the reason that they are issuing this new story about the new model saying it's going faster it's kind of just a point on the way from the kind of uh, issuing these news and these alerts in a controlled way, and
Hmm.
it's gradually going faster and faster and being worse and worse as a situation. And most likely, people could have said 15 years ago that it's going to be this fast that this guy is saying. And I'm not sure you noticed, but there was a seminar on the 2 years previous COP meeting, the climate meeting, uh, where a graduate student in, what you call it, uh, cryosphere or, glaciology, whatever, ice science, basically. Uh, she said, as an answer to a question after her little lecture there, she said that, yeah, we would have wanted to do what you suggested, but these climate models that don't have any ice, there is no ice in the poles in these UN climate models. And it felt to me like a slip of the tongue that she was not supposed to say that. And I kind of thought afterwards that, yeah, she said that because she's a totally fresh student. She's just passed her exam and she's not yet socialized into this group of people who know that you're supposed to just say that these models are fantastic and they can do everything. And please don't mention the fact that there is no ice modeled in the models. Uh, so I think that's a great huge part of why these models um, get it wrong all the time. Because if you don't have any ice, like sea ice in the Arctic and stuff, then you also don't get the what do you call this light effect, the thing that because the sun hits the white
Oh,
surface, it
albedo.
reflects it. Albedo
Albedo.
effect. Yeah,
Yeah.
all of these things which are really, really big. And I think the way I understand it anyway, they've been the key to ending and starting ice ages has been
Hmm.
these kind of small effects that, oh yeah, well, this little area of the Arctic maybe gets ice free just because of a storm or something, and the ice blows away, and then the sun sets in and warms up that, and maybe that ends the entire ice age because it's a self, it propagates the changes that come for whatever reason, like a meteor impact
Oh,
or just a,
the
yeah,
Torstein, the reason has to do with the orbit and also other planets
yeah, 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 yeah,
tugging
absolutely,
on um where the changes of surface the tilt and the orbit.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
um
yeah. I'm aware of that, but also when you have those effects that you talk about, it reinforces that influence when you
oh,
have
right,
these
right.
albedo effects on top
Yeah.
of that, right? So yeah,
Surface, like James Hansen in his book, he talks about the four major climate forcings are surface properties, aerosols, greenhouse gases, and what do you call it? Man, solar luminous. You know what I'm talking. The amount of
yeah,
sun
strength, the
that
strength
comes.
of the sun.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah,
the three major surface properties which you're talking about is a major climate forcing, and then you've got the feedback loops which are surface properties again. Um and then you have water vapor, and you have clouds. So,
yeah,
and some
yeah,
of those can act as both climate forcing and feedbacks.
Mm.
But yeah, surface properties that's a big deal, because we never in our community we don't talk a lot about the Arctic and the albedo effect, because we are losing, the Earth as a whole is losing albedo.
Mm.
Um, you know, because ice. I mean, even though the ice is getting more darker, isn't it, in the Arctic?
Yeah,
So that,
or
well,
the,
albedo is
the,
being
the, the
lost.
the
Yeah.
place where the ice used to be is getting darker. The ice is just
Correct.
gone.
Yeah, and it's just a darker ice. Yeah, even though ice is still there, it's just getting darker.
Yeah, that's also a thing. But the
Yeah,
sea, the sea where the ice used to be is also much darker. It's almost black. So
yeah.
one of the things I would like to explore, maybe in coming shows this spring, uh, is yeah. So one of the things I would like to explore a bit in the coming episodes is kind of the core uh, thing that we base a lot of our beliefs on. Maybe the climate horizon in itself. Trying to attack it or reassert what we think about it. I think that might be interesting because if you kind of if you're kind of building a big part of the way we see the world on the fact or belief that the climate is going to make the planet unlivable, then we should be able to sort of look critically on that without needing a prompt from outsiders who attack it. Just to assert, what we think or what we actually base it on. And I know that there are other things that are going bad on the planet, like topsoil and ecological stuff, and I can't remember exactly what you mentioned. But the thing is that if you take all of those things and call those the risk of nuclear war, for instance, as a group term, and then you have climate collapse, climate-induced collapse on the other side, then the way I see it, you only get a nuclear war end of civilization if everybody or some people, some few leaders are really, really stupid. But you do get a climate induced collapse of society, even if people are acting reasonably or even smart. You get it anyway because of these tipping points and points of no return that we already crossed. That's kind of the reason I think that the climate collapse is interesting
Mhm.
because you can't avoid it. You can't be smart. You can't go to a seminar and figure it out, and you can't just hire a tech billionaire just to solve it in a weekend or whatever. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, the one of the reasons why I'm not convinced of NTHE is because I look at the PETM,
mm-hmm.
um, and which happened about 55 million years ago, Paleocene Eocene thermal max,
Yeah.
and it the temperatures went up almost as high as the Permian, which was 250 million years ago. But the PETM was a minor extinction event, and so all the the methane hydrates at the time came out, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, kind of similar to the Permian. But it was only the extinction event was only in the deep oceans mainly.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's why even if the methane hydrates come out, it's really hard. For me, it's hard to know 100%. That's why where I don't agree. I used to uh, think that we're going to go extinct. I mean, we could in the near term. I mean, who knows? But I'm not. It's not. I'm not convinced anymore because there's just too
Mm.
many variables.
Yeah, and I also think this is kind of a side vision thing again, because if you if you only spend 5 minutes during a week thinking about the climate, like most people don't have
Hmm.
time to even think about it 5 minutes. Then it's, oh my god, we're gonna die. People have
Hmm.
sort of a low resolution view of the situation. It's like it's either everything is fine or, oh my god, we're gonna die, right? But if you zoom in on it a bit and you spend a little time reading and looking into it, maybe watching documentaries or whatever, you will see that it's not, oh my god, we're gonna die. It's more like, this is happening. These things are going to stop working.
Hmm.
The agriculture thing, yeah, we did that for 12,000 years. Maybe that's stopping now. And how the fuck do we feed people when we don't have diesel for the tractors and we don't have topsoils for the fields and themselves? So these things are changing big time, but it's
And
not like,
do you know that fertilizer? There's I think it's called was it? There's two things of fertilizer. I think it's potash. It's only found in Russia and Morocco, something like that. Does that ring a bell?
I heard about potash, but I'm not
Is it-
I'm not a chemist specialist.
Yeah, I mean,
But
to be able to keep this many people,
mhm,
it's it, it's just unthinkable what's coming to us. It's hard to imagine. I mean, if
mm.
we really are running out of cheap fossil fuels, um, it's yeah, it's unthinkable. What's you know yeah, it's crazy to even think about it.
Yeah, but then you also have a lot of cultures and people around the planet who never went into agriculture, or just in very small scale, like growing fruits or whatever, and chili peppers or whatever. But never went all into the agriculture thing. And the funny thing I think is that a lot of these kind of climate optimists who are sort of in the climate movement, which I believe are sort of unenlightened in some way. They go on and on about, yeah, the first people to be hit by climate problems are the global south, the dark skinned people, the homosexuals, whatever, whatever, whatever. It's kind of a dogma, which is sort of true for millions of people in the climate movement. And it may be all wrong. Maybe it is actually the Germans and the Canadians and the Scandinavians who will have the biggest punch in the face when thing hits the fan. Because we are used to a very high standard of living,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden, no more agriculture, no more food on the table, no German cars, and it's all just running around in the forest and trying to shoot a fucking bird, right? While these other people in the Amazon and the Kalahari and in the Asian jungle, they've been shooting birds and hunting animals and fish all their lives, all their history, all their span on Earth in their cultures. That's what they do, right? So they won't be totally flabbergasted and standing naked in the forest like someone else will. It's like
But the only thing
you
about
have
that
the
is,
the
yeah,
yeah.
the
Sorry.
only thing about that is the continents are heating up really fast,
Hmm.
and it's getting so dangerous in certain areas with wet bulb temperature. So I agree with you that when the global south, the people are much more resilient than us. However, they're going to have to move. They're going to have to move to an area. I don't. It's hard to tell. But what worries me right now are the droughts and the heat on the
Hmm.
continents. You know,
Hmm. Yeah, I think
um,
it's it's I think if you are. if you're one of these cultures who hunt in the forests, then they are kind of a self-temperated system. If you're in the forest, the canopy will, shade the sun away,
Yeah,
and so as long as that tropical forest doesn't burn down to the ground,
yeah,
it's
exactly.
still a place where it will be livable. I guess,
Yeah,
basically the planet, the Earth is so diverse. It's so incredibly diverse. From Greenland to Antarctica to the Himalaya to the Kalahari to Sahara to the Amazon. It's very very diverse, and even the USA is extremely diverse from the East Coast to the West Coast and up in the Sierras and stuff. And you even have polar bears in Alaska, right? So it's not like the planet is one place. It's very very different, and you have lots of cultures that we don't even think about, which are still going on. So it's still kind of
yeah,
going strong.
and we still have, okay, so we still have a lot of ice. Like if you look at the PETM, it was a, the PTM was at a warm period, you know.
Mm,
Um, so we're still, in the ice age. We're still in ice ages, even though our greenhouse gas levels take us out of the ice age. We That can change because if the populate, if most of the populate, if industrial cap if or industrial civilization collapses, you still have all
mm,
that ice inertia. You know what I mean?
mm. Yeah,
So 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 I that's another reason why I'm not convinced of NTHE, because
yeah,
we still have a lot. We There's a shitload of ice on
mm,
Greenland and Antarctica, especially Antarctica.
yeah. And one of the things we discussed earlier on the internet is like, if Vikings, from my ancestry, could go to Greenland, to Iceland and Greenland, and settle Greenland 1,200 years ago or whatever, and bring their sheep and their goats and their cows, and farm Greenland for 500 years. Uh, with that, with their technology in those days, then obviously you could bring some sheep down to Antarctica when the shit hits the fan. Yeah, you go to Australia, get some fucking sheep there, and get a boat and just go south, going south.
But you don't even
And
once civilization collapses, you don't even have to. It's going to cool the waters. I mean, in that paper that James Hansen wrote just
yeah,
recently.
but basically it won't cool the waters immediately. It's an extreme uh, self-propagating heating process going on already, that we can't stop. That's basically it's what they discuss all the time. They come out with new stories all the time about this optimistic scientist thinks that if we stop 100% of CO2 emissions in 2030, everything will be fine in 2031, which is just basically just insane, because the CO2 that we emit in 2030 doesn't even get up to the atmosphere in 2031. So it's like it takes at least 10, 20 years before nature even notices that we stopped everything in 2030.
Yeah, it would
So
be
yeah.
interesting because I feel like all the science out there right now, all the papers, they're all desperately it's about geared towards saving this civilization, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it'd be interesting to have some scientists talk about what would happen if civilization collapses. Of course, that's a taboo subject. You can't talk about that. But it would be interesting to see what would happen with civilization collapse and what would um, because right now the whole scientific community is wanting to save this civilization.
Yeah,
So their
and
papers are all geared for that.
it's really, I think it's really, really disappointing. You know, you and I, everybody has some kind of heroes, you know, and you
Mhm.
read their work. You know, maybe you read David Attenborough or James Hansen and other people that you've looked up to all of your adult activist life, and then you read their latest work, and it's like, oh, we need to save this global industrial civilization. We need industry. We need capitalist economies. Okay, so that's what you that's what you got out of getting 90 years old and looking into these things. And it's like, you know, the best criticism from Derek Jensen and the Deep Green Resistance
Yeah.
guys is that the entire eco and climate movement, more or less now, has gone into being lobbyists for different kinds of industrial projects
Yep.
like windmills or solar panels which pollute the soil and everything. And it's just crazy, you know, and that's why I love these Sami indigenous uh, young people who demonstrated in Oslo for a week and shut down the government in Oslo by blocking their entrance and stuff, because they said that these windmills on our land where our reindeer are eating in the winter, you know, by the coast, these windmills were set up without the concession or without allowance from the government. And the Supreme Court of Norway even said 1.5 years ago that these are breaking the human rights of the Sami people, so they need to come down. And the crisis that these youngsters from the Sami people created has really shown the stupid face of Norwegian Green New Deal thinking, you know, because people are saying, yeah, but we need to do the energy shift. We need to do the energy transition. We can't we can't let this reindeer eat in this area, and we're all gonna die in 2 years if we don't destroy this area for the rain. It just gets crazy, and these are gigantic windmills. It's like, I don't know, 50-meter high, whatever, and bigger than any redwood tree at the base. It's like, you know, it takes like a minute to go around almost. uh,
Yeah.
they're huge, and
Delusional
yeah,
thinking. It's all
huh?
delusional thinking. It's all delusional thinking. It's
Yeah, yeah.
like, yeah. Remember what we talked about earlier? We're wired, or we're hardwired for this. Our brains,
Mm-mm.
you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I was thinking because ever since, you know, modern agriculture started about 7,000 years ago, and so once we stopped being hunter gatherers, I feel as if maybe we became more delusional because, you know, if you're in a hunter gatherer kind of tribe, you have to
Mm.
think about survival on a daily basis. So the people, you have to be realist. So I get the sense that once we became, so we started storing grains, we became, in our gene pool, I get the sense that we became the gene for delusion became much more, started showing up a lot more in the gene pool.
Yeah.
Um, while this gene would have probably not survived as much. I mean, we all have to have some kind of delusion to know that we're going to die, because we're the only species that knows it's going to die. So we need that delusion just to be able to psychologically survive. But too much delusion has been our problem. And
Yeah.
so I'm thinking in civilization, there's just been too much delusion, and that probably helps. You know, it's a gene that gets passed on because it's the more delusion you are, the more successful you'll be in our civilization. Um, so, and also psychopathy, like in hunter gatherers, it's my understanding that they would have to get rid of, if they saw characteristics of psychopathy, they would have to get rid of it because
mm.
of that person in a, in the kindest way they could, because that you can't have those kind of people in your group, because it's survival and it's all about accountability. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but yeah, but maybe if that psycho goes psycho on a mammoth and kills the mammoth on his own, maybe you keep that psycho because it's less
That's true.
useful.
No, no. But psychopathy is different to to um. That's more maybe that's more delusion, thinking that you're not going to die. If
Yeah.
very courageous. Psychopathy are the people that hoard. Like would be people that
Mm.
hurt. Like they don't
Yeah,
have empathy. You know.
but I actually think that that kind of herding, no, hoarding psychopathy is more like a consequence, a direct consequence of agriculture and society
Oh yeah.
or
No, I
civilization.
don't. I don't.
Because
Sorry, I wasn't clear. Sorry about that. Yeah.
it's a practical physical thing about hunting societies that
Right.
if you take down a fucking mammoth which has like 1,000 kilos of meat, you and your friends want to eat that mammoth up and have a mammoth festival for 4 days.
Right. Right.
Because there's no way to preserve it because you don't have refrigerators in the Stone Age, right? So but it's more like because the only practical thing to do when you kill this mammoth is to let everybody and even the neighbors, 10 kilometers to the east, come and eat, because
Mhm.
that's practical because you have all this meat suddenly, and while in Mesopotamia or whatever, it's more like we have this grain stored over the winter. That is sort of the definition of civilization, that you store grain over the winter, and some people maybe want to steal from it and hoard for their family and stuff. So that's kind of a situational um, kind of psychopathy because you have the ability to steal and hoard and sneak and stuff, then you do it, or some people do it, right? And those people are avoided by having more kids because they are so selfish and egotistical.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. No, definitely. No, this is really interesting. Torstein, I've got to get going, but it's been really interesting, and I look forward to our next chat.
yeah, and I also hope that we have more people to chime in the
Yeah.
next time. I will certainly try to get more people from the different apps and things on the internet, and
Yeah.
go more into these psychological things, which I think you brought in as an additional vector to look at. And yeah, I would like to go a little bit more into the climate stuff itself also. We're going
Yeah.
into a very we're going into a very interesting summer and autumn in the Arctic, and we have El Nino coming up, and it's going to be action for the guys who like that kind of stuff.
But can
So
you can
it's
I ask you a
yeah,
huge favor, Torstein? I know you
yeah,
were you were kind of feeling uncomfortable with what's happening. But if you could check out the there's there are icebergs melting from Antarctica,
yeah.
which could leave us in another La Nina. We're officially out of La Nina right now, but we could go back
Mm,
into a La Nina. But there is something happening in with the ice inertia in Antarctica. It'd
Mm.
be, I know, because I don't look at satellites the way you do, but it would be very interesting if you check that out.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's a
Yeah.
very good suggestion. We could definitely delve more into that over the course of March and April. I think
Yeah.
I would read up on that.
Well,
Thank
no,
you.
it could be happening if you could check out Chris Van Steenbergen on
Mm.
Twitter right now. He says that we could probably know something by the end of, I think he said by the end of this month. The cooling,
Yeah.
if it's going to affect. But yeah, check out his tweets. I just don't have the technical know-how that you have in looking at all the satellite stuff. You know.
Well, I'm kind of a happy amateur, but I must admit I do like checking those things, and I do
I
like
don't.
I
I
like
don't. I like to be told what's. I like to be given the summary. You know, I think it
yeah,
could. Yeah.
I like being able to have numbers on things, to track a development from this year to this year and stuff. Because then you have some kind of handle on it. Otherwise, it's just like a big, huge soup or porridge or something, and there's really no way of telling. Yeah, but okay.
Check
Thank
it
you
out.
for coming, and I will totally go into those things. And I think we have a lot of interesting and exciting things coming up, and also I also would like to go into the optimism thing that you mentioned. The doomer optimist kind of thing, because
Yeah. Oh yeah.
there is really big good things to look forward to, even though everything is collapsing. So if you don't believe me, check out next week and the next coming shows, and we'll go more into the reasons to be happy because it's collapsing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Thank you so much for inviting me, Torstein. It's been fun.
Bye
I'll look forward to the next one. Take care. Bye bye.
bye. Take care, everybody.